ladies and gentlemen. I'll be talking briefly about linkage institutions. They are methods that connect the people to the government and vice versa. In a sense, you can almost say that they are bridges that connect the political world and to their people. Today, I will specifically talk about the linkage institution known as media and its connection with the legalization of marijuana. Today, we see many topics discussed in the political party in regards to marijuana, such as the case where Dr. Ben Carson gives his view on the legalization of marijuana in Colorado. In this source, I thought I saw more of a conservative nature, as Dr. Ben Carson did not change his view on marijuana, and that's a tendency usually linked towards conservatives who have opinions that really don't change. He also mentions that marijuana could not be legalized because it tends to be a starter drug for people who move on to heavier drugs. The source then claims that marijuana is a gateway drug and therefore should not be allowed to be legalized in Colorado. And even though he does give a good sense of what he thinks should be right in his statement, his argument is very weak. He doesn't provide any statistics, nor does he provide any facts to strengthen his argument. And without either of these, there's no evidence to support that marijuana is actually a gateway drug. If we were to take a more open approach, such as that of a liberal, we can see that there's logical fallacies inside this argument, such as the one where he states that marijuana will lead to the abuse of other drugs. One must simply just look at a different perspective and question, does it really? Does the use of marijuana always lead to the abuse of another drug? In this sense, it's a logical fallacy because it's not always true that marijuana leads to other hedonistic drugs, including, so as mentioned earlier, the lack of evidence. It just further undermines the argument because there's no evidence to prove that marijuana actually leads to a drug abuse. I also had the opportunity to analyze another source from a linkage institution that had a negative perspective on the legalization of marijuana. Fox News, which is known to be influenced heavily by conservative views and values, published a news report with Bill O'Reilly on April 17, 2014. The reason that it's heavily influenced by conservative ideology is due mainly not only to the static approach to the marijuana legalization like the one previously mentioned, but also because Fox News has been known to give and donate money to Republican parties, which are usually associated with conservative views. Bill O'Reilly claims that there should be a campaign against marijuana just like there was in tobacco. Although this seemed like a very logical statement to say, there were many underminings inside the argument that he presented. Unlike the first source I analyzed, he did have a personal experience which really did reinforce the mind that this could happen to someone in real life, but he didn't provide any data or any statistics or any other facts that would have had further strengthened the argument. Therefore, it sort of changed my view on if I should trust him because it didn't have evidence. He also didn't really critique other arguments or bring up any other point of views and debunk them, which is a really good and important something like if you want to strengthen your argument you should do. So in a sense, I sort of viewed him as biased, which further noted would make me not really appeal to his argument. And he also had a lot of logical fallacies that were present in his argument. He had the bandwagon appeal, which is a logical fallacy in which he states that since everyone's doing it, you should do it too. And he also made a faulty generalization. These fallacies weaken the author's argument because they present the argument as a very weak and unreliable source. He also presents a faulty generalization logical fallacy in which he states that folks involved with intoxication on a regular basis are selfish. The reason this is not correct is because you can't just automatically assume that just because people smoke marijuana on a regular basis that they are selfish. All these logical fallacies and all these lack of evidence and statistics and data furthermore just make his argument a very weak argument. Although you can see that in his perspective, personal experience is a logical way of saying that you shouldn't smoke marijuana. It's not really a really strong argument as it could be, He doesn't state any other point of views that could later be debunked. Like I said, doesn't add data and has a lot of logical fallacies. Now, media source 3 is another video I saw. It's by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. It's by CNN. CNN has been known to fund and be associated with Democratic parties, also known as a more liberal newscast. CNN is considered mostly neutral, but like I said earlier, they're mostly Democratic. Dr. Sanjay Gupta in this video mentions that marijuana is not as harmful as people perceive it. What's interesting about this video is that Dr. Sanjay Gupta had a different opinion about this earlier, but furthermore studied more onto the marijuana uses and found out that it's not really harmful as he thought it was. That marijuana is not as harmful as people perceive it. Unlike the other two, Dr. Sanjay Gupta does mention personal experience, he does mention examples, and he does provide with some facts. Although he doesn't provide statistics, he does compare different perspectives with his own. He shares the different perspective where he says that although it should be used for medical purposes, there shouldn't be people who have underdeveloped brains or developing brains such as teens that should be smoking marijuana. He unfortunately does have logical fallacies such as faulty generalization, where he says that since he went to one lab where they studied marijuana and there was a conclusive studies that it was positive, it had a positive effect on people, that he automatically assumed that it should be positive in everyone else. He also mentions testimonials by some patients and the medical community. As I did further research, he only researched a small portion of the medical community, so which could also lead to a logical fallacy and sort of a biased opinion. But overall, his argument was really strong worded and really strongly supported with his use of data, where he mentions that the dependent rate of marijuana is 9% as opposed to other drugs, such as prescription drugs like Oxycontin and other drugs, where it's 20 to 25%. So he compares these two, he compares prescription drugs and marijuana, shedding light more on marijuana, that it's a better alternative than prescription drugs. The media outlet that best supported my political values and belief was source number 3, the CNN with Dr. Sanjay Gupta. It wasn't mostly because I believe what he believes, but it was mostly because it persuaded me with what he used and the techniques he used. There was only one logical fallacy that I found, and that undermined it quite a bit, but he did provide statistics and data, personal experience, and facts, as opposed to the first two, which didn't provide any facts at all, and the data and statistics he provided was pretty good data. The political party that best supports my preference and values, I wouldn't say neither. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to the legalization of marijuana, mostly because it hasn't affected me personally. If I had to say anything, I'd say the Democratic parties, mostly because they are open to change, and I'm very open to change, to try new things possibly to see might better our country, as opposed to the conservative values, which are really strict and static on their opinions. And if I had to choose the best use for the 4 Lincoln institutions to engage the U.S. in political process, I'd say elections and political parties might be the best ones. Elections, especially in a democratic society, really reflect on what we want to happen, even though not everyone votes, which should really drastically, we should change. Media, unfortunately, and interest groups are a little bit fuzzy, or when it comes to politics, they are mostly funded by people who have money, wealth, so their opinions are mostly voiced out. Media also tends to censor a lot of things due to regulations and other stuff. Interest groups, as I said earlier, I didn't say that earlier. Alright, thank you for watching my video. Thanks to Sydney. Shout out to Sydney. She edited my video. And, subscribe, like, and comment.